Hello out there in Nile land. We begin Parshat Vayigash Be'ez Hashem. Today's shiur, as always, is learn Le'ilui Nishmas Rachaleh Bas Rebbe Chaim Tzvi Alel Shalom. And as today's shiur is being recorded on Zos Chanukah, we hope the light of Chanukah will make you illuminated and enlightened. And so let's begin. We're still groping a little bit, let's be honest, of how to deliver this shiur in a way that our mandate is to provide a summary of the story of the Parsha. It's going to become more and more difficult as we're leaving the story sections of the Torah, and yet we continue. Here's our summary. After Binyamin, this is how our Parsha begins. After Binyamin was accused of stealing Yosef's goblet, Yehuda approaches Yosef and presents a very eloquent appeal. He's going to invoke all kinds of compassion, because what other strategy does he have to try and bring about Binyamin's emancipation? He pointed out to Yosef the special love and affection that their father Yaakov had for Binyamin, his only remaining son from his wife Rachel. The love was so intense that Binyamin's soul was as dear to Yaakov as his very own. In fact, Yehuda continues that Yaakov will see that Binyamin has not returned with them. Certainly it will cause the death of Yaakov. That's how attached they are. There is no other recourse to bring back Binyamin. Yehuda also explained that it was he himself who had personally guaranteed the safe return of Binyamin, and failure result in Yehuda's excommunication, not only in this world but also in the world to come. So the stakes are very, very high for Yehuda. Therefore, Yehuda implores that he be allowed to remain in Egypt as a slave in lieu of Binyamin, and this will allow Binyamin to be returned with his brothers back to his father. Yosef could no longer restrain his strong emotions, and he ordered the departure of all the persons from the room except for his brothers. We will deal with this at greater length as we go through the Parsha. Yosef, then alone in the room with his brothers, raises his voice and begins weeping, and he exclaims, "I am Yosef." And then he quickly inquires, "Is my father really still alive?" The brothers could not answer him, for they were ashamed of the sin which they had committed. They were just rendered speechless. Yosef Yosef realizes this, and he calls them to come closer. And he's going to explain to them they should have no reason to be concerned. He comforted them and told them not to be sad that they had sold him, for God had actually sent him here, meaning down to Egypt, to keep them alive during the years of famine. He urges them to quickly return to Canaan and tell their father to come down to Egypt with all of his children, grandchildren, all of his possessions. They would live in the land of Goshen. That was pasture land that was very well suited. Now, of course, the sheep were worshipped as gods in Egypt, so the Egyptians had no desire for pasture land or for people involved in pastures. But for the Jews who were engaged in this agricultural or this, taking care of the animals, this was very important. Yosef would supply them with sufficient food for the remaining years of the famine. The news of the arrival of Yosef's brothers reaches Paro, and Paro tells Yosef to tell his brothers to bring back to Yaakov all their households to Egypt. Furthermore, said Pharaoh, he commands Yosef to tell them to take wagons from Egypt to be able to transport their wives and their children. Yosef presented each of his brothers with sets of different clothing, and he gave gifts to each and every one of them. But for Binyamin, he gave him 5 sets, 5 times as much as he gave to the other brothers. He gave them 300 sloim, that's the amount of currency. He also gave them provisions for the journey. To his father he sent 10 donkeys laden with the best of the land of Egypt, 10 asses laden with all types of food for the journey. So the brothers leave Egypt and they come to Canaan to go back to their father Yaakov. They informed their father Yosef was still alive and that he ruled over the entire land of Egypt. At this point, Yaakov's heart just simply skips a beat. His heart goes faint. He cannot believe what he's hearing, that his long-lost son Yosef lives yet. He couldn't believe them. Then the brothers told Yaakov everything Yosef had told them. And Yaakov heard all this, and when he saw the wagons which he had sent, he realized that Yosef had indeed become the king in Egypt. And Yaakov exclaims, "There's still much joy in my life, but Yosef is still alive. I'll go and see him before I die." Then Yaakov sets forth on his journey and reaches Beersheba, where he offers sacrifices to God. God appears there to Yaakov in a vision. You need not be afraid to descend down to Egypt. Don't be afraid, Yaakov. I shall be with you. And I will make you into a large nation. God promises Yaakov that he will accompany him down to Egypt. He will later bring Yaakov back to Eretz Yisrael, which means, of course, that Yaakov will be buried in the land of Israel. Yaakov goes down to Egypt with all of his children and his grandchildren. There were 70 persons in the house of Yaakov that came into Egypt, and they will emerge from Egypt, as we know, as a mighty nation of nearly 3 million people. Yosef personally harnesses his chariot and went to meet his father. In an emotion-filled scene, Yosef finally meets his father. Yosef falls upon his father's neck and cries continuously. And Yaakov proclaims, "If I would die immediately after having seen you now, I would be consoled, for you are still alive." Yosef told his brothers that their household and their households that he was going to inform Pharaoh of their arrival. He advises the brothers that Pharaoh calls them and asks them their occupation. They should reply, "They are herdsmen." And this is really unique how Yosef is able to engineer this choreograph, this fakeroony in front of Pharaoh. He brings the 5 weakest brothers, the ones that could not be accused of having done any harm. These weak brothers go before Pharaoh. What are we? We're a bunch of schleppers. We're Kollelite. We're learning in yeshiva. It's not. We just don't be worried about us. They should reply with the rest of her